previous sections of Module 2 went through a number of accounting approaches and methodologies that generally are used to measure the metabolism of cities. However, there are some other ways to measure urban resource use and pollution emissions. While they are not dubbed as urban metabolism, they also monitor flows in order to find ways to reduce them. In the present video, we briefly explore some standards and indicators that are out there and which could inform you about the metabolism of cities. Keep in mind that all these standards and indicators use a territorial and a top-down approach. If you want to see the pros and cons of these approaches, please go back to the previous video of this module. Like for life cycle assessment, an international standard was developed to measure the performance of city services and quality of life. The ISO standard 37120 was established and published a set of indicators that help cities to monitor their performance, either for comparing their results with other cities or to set mitigation objectives. This standard has 100 indicators and cover around 20 themes. The indicators are subdivided into core, supporting, and profile indicators. Cities can also choose to become certified when using this standard, enabling cities to learn from others, but also to be recognized for their performance. The data from cities that have been certified are visible in this open data platform. The following link over here shows you where to go. As soon as you click on one of the cities, you can look at the different reported indicators for one specific city or one specific district. You can also compare a number of cities simultaneously in order to look at whether the environmental performance of cities is linked to other indicators. The second standard presented here is the Global Protocol for Community-Scale Greenhouse Gas Emission Inventory, or in short, the GPC. The GPC was developed by the World Resource Institute, the C40 Climate Leadership Group, and ICLEI. The GPC is a method to measure all emissions in order to help cities to meet their targets. This tool also helps to harmonize and add transparency to existing efforts. The efforts are the ones that cities have already carried out around the world to mitigate their emissions. The GPC accounts for citywide emissions. This means that emissions from sectors such as industries, transportation, buildings, agriculture, and land use change are included. In addition, GPC considers not only direct emissions that are occurring locally, but also indirect emissions that take place outside of the city's boundaries. To distinguish between these type of emissions, GPC has defined three categories: Scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1, as you can see on the left of the graph, includes all the direct emissions happening on the considered territory. Scope 2, as you can see in the middle of this diagram, covers the greenhouse gas emissions resulting from the use of electricity, heat, steam, or cooling within the city. Finally, Scope 3, the right part of this diagram, captures all other emissions that occur outside of the city boundary as a result of activities taking place inside the city. Once again, if you follow the link on the bottom of your screen, you can explore the greenhouse gas emissions of a number of C40 cities using either the GPC method or other methods to measure their greenhouse gas emissions. The last framework presented in this video is the Green City Index of Siemens. Unlike the two previous standards and protocols, standard and protocol, this index provides a comprehensive environmental overview of cities. It covers a number of flows and different types of infrastructures ranging from water, CO2, energy and waste to buildings and transport. This index, however, is not done by the cities themselves, but from the economist intelligence units for Siemens. This index was used on more than 120 cities, but there is no recent updates from this index. So in this short video, we just showed 3 different standards to measure the environmental performance, or at least parts of it. But are standards so important, or a simple data collection exercise could be sufficient? Well, if every city uses a different method to measure their environmental performance, it becomes almost impossible to compare them. Without making the comparison possible, we can't have an idea of the overall emissions of cities, and we can't have an idea of how to enable knowledge sharing between cities. Having said that, which standard should you be using to measure the environmental performance of your city? And should you use one of the standards that we've presented here, or one of the methodologies explained in the previous video, or something else? Well, standards and methodologies have different objectives and different targeted audiences. In general, standards help to compare your city with others and benchmark it. The methodologies we explained before provide a thorough analysis in order to understand what are the driving forces behind these metabolic flows. So not only measure them, but understand them. To conclude, how do you choose a standard? Which one to choose, one over the other? In fact, there are many more frameworks out there. From an urban metabolism perspective, you should always choose a standard that measures the most flows and which are both direct and indirect. This video concludes Module 2, which focused on urban environmental assessments, and the next module will provide to you 2 real case studies which will go into the details of using such methodologies and standards.